Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So typically every month on this channel I will run my own personal wish list for the next update, as well as giving my community a chance to voice their opinions for a community wish list. This gathers together ideas, features and such that the Gran Turismo 7 community as a whole would absolutely love to see. Now I've been doing these videos for around about a year and a half, and I feel like now is a good time to compile the top 10 most requested features I see almost every single month. Obviously things like, buyable engine swaps and such will not be a thing on this list because they have been added. This is as of update 1.42. Now just a note, things that are kind of very specific, like specific cars, are not going to be included. This is mainly going to be features of the game, quality of life changes, things like that I see typically all the time, ranging from 10, which is obviously the least requested of the list but still very much requested, down to number 1, which is the one that I will typically see the most every single time I do a community wish list video, and obviously my own personal one. However, I am going to be mainly looking at the community opinion as a whole, kind of taking together all of the previous wish list videos. So let's get into it. So let's kick it off with number 10, and this is going to be from the PSVR 2 players. There is a ton of you guys that will only play GT7 in PSVR 2, and the most requested feature I always see from you guys every single month is a VR HUD update, and I fully agree with this. Whilst I don't mainly play in PSVR 2, I do own one, I do play GT7 in it from time to time, and I fully agree that we do need more customization options for PSVR 2 HUD, at least in terms of the game. There is a lot of information missing when you're playing PSVR 2, and there is also no way to actually realistically customize the layout of the HUD to your individual liking. It's either kind of on, off, there's no real middle ground where you can actually go in and customize how you want it laid out. So I fully agree with this one. It's perhaps the most requested PSVR 2 feature that I've seen for the last year that the VR 2 has been out and implemented inside of GT7. Number 9 is going to be a bit more of a quality of life change. It's one that I've seen more and more as the life cycle of GT7 has gone on, and that's going to be a clean race bonus indicator. Now if you don't know, you will get a 50% bonus if you get a clean race. During this you can earn upwards of a good couple of 100,000 credits just for getting that clean race. Now in terms of certain events, there's very specific ways you can actually lose that clean race bonus. Let's take Tokyo 600 PP for example. Whilst you can literally sit there and ride the entire wall, there's a set of cones and a line at the back of the actual final turn of that track where if you run over it you will lose that clean race bonus. You can also not hit the AI on the opening lap, but if you then go to lap them and hit them, you will still receive the clean race bonus. It's sometimes very specific what does get you the clean race bonus and what doesn't, and a little indicator on your screen just to confirm that you've got that 50% credit bonus will be absolutely incredible, especially in terms of grinding credits or just taking on the weekly challenges and such. So fully agree with this one. It's been popping up more and more. So let's move on next from relatively minor features to the first proper overhaul feature request, and this is going to be to do with sport mode, a sport mode update. Now what is meant by this? If you don't know, the current version of sport mode that features in GT7 has pretty much stayed the same way since the very early days of GT Sport. Whilst with GT Sport it did actually originally used to be actual daily races where it was refreshed every day, since kind of a few months into GT Sport's life cycle, it has continued to just go to a weekly format of 3 events, very specific, typically a one make, then a sprint race, and then a GT endurance race, which isn't actually endurance and typically takes anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. Now what's meant by this is BOP is currently all over the place. They've kind of tried to add things like weather from time to time as well as tuning and such, and it doesn't quite work. You'll typically end up with a very one-sided race with only one car running as the week goes on. Certainly we need BOP updates to sport mode to make it a bit more competitive and a bit more spread out, but but also the inclusion of the likes of a daily race D, where with Suzuka we had 20 laps and it went on for almost an hour. A lot of people are requesting proper full-blown endurance races within sport mode. Again, a lot kind of needs changing in sport mode. It's a very, I guess, exhausted feature at this point, and it is certainly in need of some absolute changes, whether that's a daily race D, BOP changes, making the grids a bit better, making the grids bigger, considering, you know, it's currently locked in at 16, yet this is running on next gen and 20 players should realistically be the bare minimum. So a full sport mode overhaul certainly needed, and one that I've been seeing more and more, especially considering a lot of the daily races are typically very bland and very repetitive, apart from maybe 1 or 2 a month where they actually try and change it up a slight bit. So on to number 7, from multiplayer back to the single player portion of GT7. This has to be mission challenges. This is one that I see a ton. I've always seen it a ton. When it comes to mission challenges, we've only ever had a single post-launch support package for the mission challenges, and that was a month after the game released, and they were kind of bundled in as an apology for kind of all the controversy that surrounded the game upon release. Those were the 1-hour endurance races. Since then there has been literally nothing. We've kind of had, you know, the likes of master licenses come to the game, but mission challenges, not a single look in since April of 2022. It's kind of sat there for almost 2 years, fully completed for most players and never to be touched again, and it's a massive shame. I'm also going to bundle in drag racing and drift racing in this kind of category, just because there's a load of people that really want them, and these mission challenges did feature that in terms of their own little challenges within. So fully agree there, mission challenges is definitely something that needs to be kind of implemented upon and kind of built upon. You know, there's a great foundation for many different types of challenges in game. I feel like they were absolutely fantastic and a blast to play through. I played through them recently on a second account, absolutely loved them to death, and it's a shame that they've kind of felt, I guess, long since abandoned by Polyphony. So definitely more mission challenges. It's about time. It's almost been 2 years at this point. In at number 6 is going to be one that has stemmed all the way back from the game's release, and that is going to be around the economy changes. So let's talk about this one quickly. I don't really need to say too much on it. Let's be honest, the economy has been a bit of a shambles since the game released, and whilst it has certainly improved over time, it is definitely not to the perfect standard, and it probably never will be. I think the biggest kick in the teeth and the biggest gripe a lot of players have is the fact that many methods come and go or get completely patched out to kind of force the microtransactions. Whilst I'm assuming most players will never ever touch these, it is certainly ridiculous when we look at cars that have gone from maybe costing £5 in GT Sport at a maximum, now costing almost a couple of £100 to actually go ahead and get the credits needed to buy them. The microtransactions in this game are absolutely ridiculous. They're not priced in a decent way, and with the economy being in the shape it currently is, with events that should typically pay much higher than they should just not, and paying absolute pittance, I fully agree that an economy revamp and change is absolutely needed. Like I said, it has improved since day one, but it's certainly from time to time just not putting those higher, more worthy events in. In fact, the last time we ever really saw them was the AFK methods with 1.40, and all the way prior to that was in April of 2022 when the 4 typical grinding events kind of made their debut in the game, that being Spa, Tokyo, Le Mans, Sardinia. So since then it's been absolute, you know, silence in terms of the economy, and most of these longer events that have come in since have paid a maximum of anywhere from 200 to 300,000 credits and are just not really worth the time. In at number 5, we're halfway through the list now. Let's talk about group cars. This is one that I've been seeing a lot recently, and it's probably always been a problem since the game got released. Updated group cars. We saw very little changes in terms of new, I guess, race vehicles for the groups from GT Sport to GT7. Now the most criminal for me is the Group 2 vehicles. These are typically GT500 machines, and the most modern spec we currently have is from 2016. That is 8 years ago, and they've not been updated since. And it really is a shame, considering that is a, you know, typically, you know, Super GT is a Japanese form of motorsport, very much much keeps its roots in Asia, obviously typically Japan, and obviously with most of the Gran Turismo games there's always been updates to those rosters of vehicles, you know, especially in the older days. Things like the NSX were always running 99 specs or 2001 specs and such, so to see them not updated for GT7 is a massive missed potential. They're absolutely great cars, it's a very, I guess, small list, and not seeing it up to date with things like the new Z car and obviously the new Honda Civic that starts this year, Toyota Supras and such, is a massive missed potential considering just how shallow that group typically is in comparison to the likes of Group 1, 3 and 4. Now, not to mention the obviously World Series finals and such, seeing these older Group 3, Group 4 cars and such and Group 1 cars run around very much outdated by around about 11 years when we look at things like the Ferrari 458 and such. It's just not a great look for a series that takes itself so serious and really does pull in a lot of viewers. Again, I know it goes much deeper than just putting in anything you want. There's things like licenses, exclusive rights and such to certain vehicles, so you know, some of them we may never ever see. However, with the backing of Sony, you'd expect them to be pumping the money in, especially if they want things like the World Finals to continue. You know, again, some of these cars are outdated by around about 10 to 11 years at this point, and it's just not a great look when we see these cars in the World Finals just kind of pottering around being completely outdated. So hopefully Sony starts pumping some money in to get the rights, and hopefully we can see them in future releases, especially those Group 2 GT500s. They're a must. In at number 4 is again going to be a quality of life change, but it's one that I see absolutely all the time, absolutely everywhere: roulette wheel changes. Now, if you don't know, there's the infamous meme that the top left will always be your prize for your daily marathon. Whilst the roulette wheel has received minor changes over the time, and obviously since GT7 release, it's never been enough to really take away from the typical top left of the wheel, giving you the lowest reward pretty much all the time. I fully agree that this needs changing, either increase the rarity of tickets, especially as you go further on. Whilst this is typically a thing and the minimum you can only get is a 3-star ticket at maximum level, it still isn't enough and it will typically yield the lowest reward. So absolutely agree with this one, seen it everywhere. Roulette changes are massively needed. The way it currently is, it's just not worth players logging in every single day knowing that they're probably only going to get around about 5 to 10,000 credits each time they get that marathon ticket. So taking the first step of the podium of this top 10 list, again another quality of life change, but certainly one that is definitely needed: the removal of dealership invites. They're completely pointless at this point in time. We've got things such as the Aston Martin Valkyrie, which is able to be bought for 4 million openly, but yet the Vulcan's locked off. Same with the Bugatti Veyron and the Bugatti Chiron. Again, it's all very much look based off that terrible roulette system, and I fully agree that the removal at this point, or more ways to earn the dealer invites by typically maybe putting miles on the car or that brand of car, should be the way to go about it if you want to keep these locked off. Get them as a special reward. Maybe driving around in an Aston Martin for, let's say, 500 miles is going to give you that dealership invite. That way you can buy them up. Again, players have been playing for over, you know, a year to almost 2 years and such, and they've never yet received a specific dealer invite, meaning that they cannot actually purchase all of the vehicles since they're completely locked off. I got lucky with this. They opened them up in, I think, April of 2022 to every single player for an entire month. I grabbed all of mine then, but for those that missed it, we've never had anything else like that since. So it is proven that they can remove it, and I fully agree with the removal of them. So taking the runners up spot in terms of things that I always see requested for GT7, this is going to be endurance races or grinding events. Now, as you may know, they typically get a bunch of events added each month for GT7. While some of these are longer in length, typically they will pay out absolutely nothing, or they're just not long enough. It kind of rotates in with a bit like the mission challenges, where we want these upwards of 1 hour to 4 hour to 12 hour to 20 24-hour races that Gran Turismo is known for. These were always a staple of the early games, and again, just not seeing it in a full-blown release like GT7, yet we see a lot longer events in GT Sport, is just a massive shame. Certainly it feels slept on. I know a lot of players would absolutely love those longer events with better rewards, better payouts, and maybe even the chance to grab some special rewards for doing a 24-hour race with a fair payout. So fully agree, more endurance races / grinding races absolutely needed. So in at number 1 and taking the top spot for this list, perhaps the most requested thing I see every single month, and that is going to be new tracks. Now this isn't to say that Gran Turismo 7 actually lacks tracks, it seriously doesn't. It's got an impressive roster, it's got multiple layouts and such, but in terms of new tracks that we've never seen before, or maybe old favourites, especially when it comes to nostalgia, we've seen very little of things like midfield, autumn and all that kind of stuff, as well as a lack of any real world tracks since the release of the game. Now we have had a few layout changes to things like Barcelona and Nürburgring. We've also had things such as obviously Watkins Glen, which was absolutely fantastic, but from then on it's just been absolutely downhill. We've got things like Grand Valley Highway 1, which was a terrible version of a very much loved classic Gran Turismo track, and then obviously most recently Lake Louise, that pretty much feels like it's just kind of been forgotten about after only a couple of months. So I fully agree that we need either the nostalgic tracks in their old way or shape or form, or kind of up to date to be able to run more cars, or more real world tracks. This is the one that I see more than absolutely anything, that tracks are needed, and in some sense I do fully agree. Thanks so much for joining me on this top 10 list. Let me know if there's anything that's not on this list that you do want to see come to GT7. Thank you so much for watching, and a big thank you to all of my channel members. I'll see you in the next one. Take care guys, peace.